Live but recorded. Good afternoon, everybody, and a warm welcome to you all. It is Friday, the 29th of October. It is Lessons in Leadership once again. I'm Mary Gregory, and I am absolutely delighted to welcome Lorraine Thomas here today. Hello, Lorraine.
Hello, Mary. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I am so pleased to have you here today, Lorraine. I was really touched that you could join me. So just a bit of background for you and I so that people know what the connection is. We've met via Sister Snog, which is a fantastic and extraordinary business club for women, for business women, which I thoroughly enjoy being part of. We always have lots of fun when we connect. But I think the reason I invited you today is that you whenever I speak to you, I always come away totally inspired and always having learned something. And for our viewers watching today, Lorraine is probably one of the most courageous women that I know, particularly when it comes to taking big, audacious steps. So I want you to share. I know that you're in property. You didn't start out in property, but what I really love about what you do in property is you do it with a social heart. So it's about making a difference to the world and making a difference to those people who might be struggling to get themselves on the property ladder or making the most of their lives. You have a big social heart around supporting that community. So, but let's go right back and just hear a bit more about your story of how did you get into being in property development? Because that's not where you started out. You started out in the legal side of things. Yeah. So tell me a bit more about that.
Okay, so I started out in law firms in the city, heading business development and marketing. And I loved my job. You know, it was like time is money, shut that lift. It was all sort of fast paced. And actually, at the time, you complain about it. You go, panic, 8 till 8. But there's a massive payoff. You get paid well, you enjoy the opportunities.
Yes.
My dad became unwell with Parkinson's and dementia. And my mum had died when I was 16 to cervical cancer. And so my dad had been mum and dad for a very, very long time.
Yes.
I felt it was my duty to give back to him. Yes. So I gave up my job, literally just gave up my job and said, I'm going to care for my dad on £62.50 a week. Wow. I didn't know how I was going to pay my mortgage. I didn't know how it was all going to work. But there was a little voice in my head that said, don't worry, I'll look after you. Yes. I followed that voice and I looked after Dad. And I tell you, Mary, I've never been richer. So there is something about when you have it all and then you have nothing. And you're just humble in the presence of having to cope, having to think about what you're buying in the supermarket, having to think how you're going to heat the house, having to think of all these things. There is something that makes you more aware, more conscious. And that happened to me. And so whilst caring for Dad, no sleep, Dad was waking up in the night, all of this, sleeping in the day. So I just felt I was running on empty all the time. About 8 months into all of this and trying to navigate the system, social services system, I then got an email into my inbox, which is a whole other story. But the email wasn't meant for me; it was meant for another Lorraine. That was the voice that came back that said it will be all right. And it's actually my business partner today, Dolores, who I knew her from church, and she wanted somebody to find accommodation for young adults that were looked after by the borough. And I literally bit her arm off. I thought anything to get away from my dad for 2 to 3 days a week. Anyone that's a carer will know the stress and the strain of being around the person you're caring for 24/7.
Okay, so, can I just come in because there's a couple of things that you said there, which we'll absolutely come back to that, to where you are in that story. Yeah. But when you said you had this really high flying job, you were earning a fortune, you then went on to £62.50 a week. You never felt richer. What was the richer bit? In what way did you feel richer? Where did the richness come from?
So when you I say earning a fortune, it was a decent salary, a decent salary. So when you give up I need this, I need that, I must have this, and you know that your job is doing something that is somebody's absolutely relying on you, and you're doing that, and the money that you earn actually then means something.
Yes.
And it's almost as if you're careful with it, you're careful with yourself, because it means something quite different.
Yes.
And actually other things happen. So for me, Dad said, and it was just like in passing, he went, my pension, Lorraine, use that to sort of help you pay your mortgage. Lorraine, use this. I just found that all around me, people were giving me things. No, it was their time. They were giving me, advice. I felt rich with not having financial money, but having the greatness around me, and people knew what I was doing, so they supported me. And it's a bit like that property developer hat that I wear. When you say property developer, people immediately go fat cat. But actually, when you go, no, property developer with a purpose, and one that actually the profit that I make goes straight back into trying to lift another by buying something that's going to house somebody that can't get onto the ladder. So, I know I've ducked and dived the question a bit, but it's quite a deep phenomenon.
Well, what I'm hearing is, and this is my interpretation, but what I'm hearing is that although you weren't earning a big, comfortable salary anymore, there were other things that opened up for you. So people gave to you and contributed to you. Your father gave you his pension, for example. You had other people that contributed their skills to help you. And so it kind of the emotional support came through for you, and that gave you a richness in your life that you hadn't had before, is what I'm hearing.
Totally. And it's just the presence of, it may have been a different aura that I was a carer, so I was able, it was almost as if I heard people differently.
Yes.
And they listened to me differently.
Yes.
And that's the richness.
Yes. And you must have been ready to receive as well, because it's sometimes we don't get what we need because we're not actually willing to receive it, but you obviously were open to receiving what people contributed.
Yeah. And so at that point, I went off to help Dolores find this accommodation, north, south, east, west. Wow. And I realized, Mary, that I was actually quite good at it. I didn't have this skill set. I'd never spoken to a estate agent before to say, can you rent me your flat, please? And so I was speaking to landlords, speaking to these agents, giving them the story that your property will help a young person. Yes, they may not, this young person has been troubled. They've gone through the care system. They just need somewhere to live, and then they will totally transform themselves. Obviously, some landlords bought it, some didn't. It's that rent my property to a 16 to 24-year-old. You've got to be kidding, haven't you?
Yeah.
There is the risk that they could absolutely trash it, but we gave the guarantees that we would fix it and all of this. So, but what I found was I was almost begging these landlords to give me really quite shabby and not really good accommodation, and having to, jump through hoops, give really large deposits, sometimes up to 6 months deposits, just to secure a 2-bedroom or a 1-bedroom flat.
Yes.
And I thought, this is ridiculous. It's not even nice. It's got damp and, mushrooms growing out the walls, and this is not acceptable. So Dolores and I went off to auction. Long story short, bought our first property, and it all started from there.
Wow.
Really.
So how did you, that in itself, going to auction, the whole idea of actually just showing up and bidding on a property. And then how did you manage all the finances and all the background of that to actually make that happen?
Well, the reason I mentor today is because I made so many mistakes. We probably made every mistake going with our finance, with everything. So Dad had said, look, you know what, Lorraine, it's no use to me when I die. So why don't you just have this money now? And I thought, oh, right. So he'd given me the deposit. Dolores had her half. And that's what I mean. Those blessings just came. That would never have happened to me had I still been in my job, going along. And he said, have it now, but make sure that you do good with it, and make sure that you also look after Maureen, which is my sister, my older sister, when you've done good with it. And I just thought that stayed with me. So when we bought, we did it the wrong way. We got a broker, then we went into bridging. We didn't understand any of it. We made a lot of mistakes. I could write a book.
Maybe you should.
Came through it. And we came through it, and we lived to tell this tale. And we went.
So this first property that you bought, you turned it into flats and rented it for young people.
It was actually an ex-housing association, really run down property. And so we made the 2 flats beautiful, and then we sold them. So what our intention was to put some tenants in there first of all, and make that be our sort of our first, right, we've housed this young person or disadvantaged person. But what happened next was that I was dropping my sister home, and she spotted a plot of land. And this land was then the next stage for us in development. So we'd gone from going to auction straight to development. And in between, we then were like, how did that happen? And the journey has been, it's been a weird one, because we went off to auction, had to sell that property to help us to buy the land, which is a whole other story about how we then moved into development. And then we started buying property to house people from there.
Right. So, this is fascinating. So you sold the first property that you bought at auction, having developed it, having refurbished it, but not let it out. You sold those. You then bought the land. And what did you do with the land?
We turned it into 9 units, and so 7 apartments and 2 houses.
Right.
Again, we had no experience whatsoever about developing ground up. And we, I remember our architect saying to us, Lorraine, just be cautious. Just go for 6 units. You're likely to get it then. And I was thinking, no, the mayor's saying build up. It needs housing. We've got to try. And we did. We went off to pre-planning. They loved it. They granted the permission, and off we went. Then the music started, because we had to deal with finance. We had to deal with the ground. We had to deal with a whole host of issues that come with development. And there's a reason people say, you start with maybe serviced accommodation or rent to rent, and then you work your way up. You might then go to auction, you might then do a refurb or a flip or whatever it is. Development is the last strata, and there's a reason for that, because it's risky. If you go off and buy a piece of land and it's not got planning permission on, and you don't get the planning permission, so it is risky.
But so you keep taking these risks. I'm interested in when you saw that piece of land, you were there with your sister, you saw, right, I'm going to buy that, and you and Dolores bought it. What drove you to do that? Again, what I'm hearing is you're fearless. I don't hear there's any fear. You just go and do it.
Yeah, because my thing is, what's the worst that can happen? Yeah. And I think it's something from losing my mum at 16 she left me with an inner, I remember her saying, you know, may God bless you. And I didn't understand what that meant. But it was almost like an inner fear that you go do anything. And if you fail, just fail big. It's fine. Because the learning will be greater. So it's almost as if you don't try it, you know, what next for you? Because you'll always be sitting there thinking, I should have done that. Yes. I should have. Yes. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Yeah. And that's kind of not a phrase that Dolores and I have. We just don't have that coulda, woulda, shoulda. We just go, let's go for it.
Yeah, if you're going to fail, you fail big, is what I hear.
You're going to fail.
You might as well fail big than fail small.
Yeah. Because you'll have learned a lot, and you'll pick yourself up. You'll bounce back. There'll be a story to tell. There'll be lessons learned. There'll be other things gained in that failure. There'll be other things gained, and that's the way we kind of look at it, really.
Yes. So tell me more about how you support young people. So you got your second property, you developed the second piece of land that you purchased, and you've turned it into flats and houses. Where do the young people fit in here, and how you support them from a social housing point of view?
We've now got a number of properties that essentially what happens is Dolores has a business, another business called Step Ahead.
Yeah.
And her business is to work with local authorities to house these young people, but also support them with a social worker and a key worker. So they almost act like, the key worker acts like almost like a surrogate parent. They'll go in and check that they're all right, that they're doing their course, or have got, or they're doing something, they're training, whatever. And so that part of her business then feeds into our property business, because often she can't find the right accommodation. So our property arm will then look at how we house them in one of our flats or one of our studios or whatever. But also, aside to that, we also rent to normal people who are just purely disadvantaged. And by that, I mean, they don't tick all the boxes. And View from My Window is all about lifting others. And I always talk about when my parents came to this country and nobody would give them a room. And they ended up sharing a room with two other couples. Because it's so bad, nobody would give them a room.
Yes.
And that struggle that they had, I see it in others, that all they want is to be able to get a roof over their head so that they can do amazing things.
Yes.
And how we do that is by not putting pressure on them to say, right, you need 2 months in advance. You need to pass all the credit checks. You need to have 13 different references. And we don't. We're quite loose with that. And we do it on the character of the person.
Okay.
And so that they know that we're giving them an opportunity. We already know they haven't passed that credit check. We already know that it's risky. It's high risk. Again, it's high risk.
Yes.
But when you help somebody, I've found in our experience, they find work, they care, they make it their mission to look after the property because we've given them something quite nice.
Yes.
And when they start with that and they've got the right attitude, it just transpires into bigger and bigger things. And so when I talk about being a landlord with a social purpose, I truly mean that the purpose is bigger than the profit. So you get the profit by seeing the growth of that husband and wife or that individual, start a new career or just start doing something, whereas they weren't doing anything before. Or now that they've got an address, it means that they've got access to other things. So that's where the profit comes in. And then, as a socially responsible landlord, I'm here to make a profit. I have to live, but make sure that the profit it doesn't outweigh the purpose. So the profit feeds into the purpose, because I'll put it back into the purpose of then buying more so that I can rent to people. Or with our scheme, with our development, it's got Help to Buy on it. So that is all about putting first-time buyers on the ladder with equity funding from the government. So there's always an element of purpose in it.
That sounds incredible. So what I'm hearing is there's a real balance between, absolutely, I mean, any business, when you're in business, it's irresponsible not to make a profit, because you're going to go out of business.
Exactly.
So you need to make money, and you need to live. You know, you need to have your own life and live your own life. So you make enough money for that, but it's not all about the profit. It's not all about the money. It's about, what's the difference I'm making to these young people, and giving them a foot on the ladder, really, and not even in, you know, they might still be renting, but you're giving them a foot on the ladder in their lives, is what I'm hearing. That they have a chance to establish themselves.
And it's so important that it's you know, people may say, well, how can you do that? How would you fill a void if they stop paying the rent? Doing this, to work with them, just work with them so that they can, you know, don't tread on them in their darkest hour. Try and work with them. Not all landlords can afford to do that. I'm actually owning up and going, this is not for all landlords. But what I do want to do is create a new breed of landlord, where they understand and have an empathy, you know, a socially conscious mind, that we all can't be cut from the same cloth. We all haven't got it all, and therefore there has to be some of us that help others so that they can come and turn their lives around and do something fantastic.
This is so impressive, and this is why you inspire me. And you know, I do a lot of work with big corporates, and there is something around, there are, you know, certain corporates who they kind of get disconnected from their purpose, and they're it's all about making money, and that's it. And what I'm hearing is that you have that balance of having a social heart, and the difference that you're making in the world, that makes such a much more holistic contribution to our society than just
100%.
wanting to make money.
Because there is no point in me having a wad of money and going, look at my bank account, look at me. What satisfaction would that give me? What footprint would I have? What legacy would I believe in? What would I be teaching my children? I want people to look at me and go, she did it. She did that. I can do it. And that's the key. You know, I want people to be inspired, not look at me and think, oh, well, it's all going good for her. Because trust me, it isn't all a bed of roses. We're dealing with difficult young people, difficult people that have problems. And with that comes issues. So it's not a bed of roses, but it's riding the storm.
Yes. I love that. And I want to ask you about your own personal journey now. And you can choose this from any part of your life, but I'm kind of a bit curious about, there must have been a time from your journey from £62.50 a week to your multi-million property empire, which, you know, you're creating not just for yourself, but for everyone. There must have been a point on that journey that shook you at some point, or made you think, oh my God, you know, and has actually shaped how you show up and lead today, and who you are today, which is this phenomenally inspiring leader. Lorraine.
I think
can you think of an actual situation that really caused you to think, no, this is what it's all about, and this is how I'm going to be around it?
I think I've kind of alluded to it. I think growing up, and I think the key has to go back to that £62.50. Because that has to be how I'm going to show up. And if you haven't gone down there low, you don't know what it's like to be on the ground. And so therefore, if you know what it's like to be on the ground, why would you want anybody to be there? If you can see people on the ground, why are you going to walk past them? You need to take them with you. And so I think it was that moment when I recognized that I could give up my job just believe in myself, have faith. I have a very strong faith.
Yeah.
And if you have a strong faith, you can't dilly-dally with it. You either have it, that strong faith, or you don't.
So when you talk about faith, is that faith in God or faith in yourself or faith in making a difference?
I think it's got to be, it's all of those. But the main one is, I have a connection with, I have a strong faith with God.
Yeah.
And my family have grown up like that. And I'm not saying everybody has that or should have that.
Mm.
But when you lose it all and you're there bare open and you're about to also lose somebody that you love, which was my dad,
yes,
you then recognize what's it all about. That's the moment that you go, what's it all about? When I got a call saying Dad's, he's refusing to open the door to the carers, he's not, he's fallen over again, he's hit his head again, I suddenly thought, this job does not compare with me being with him. And at that point I thought, I've got to just care for him. And what am I going to do? It's almost like the path was cut out.
Yes.
But then it moved in different ways. So I thought, that's it. That's my life now. I'm a carer until I retire.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I do. And all of a sudden, something else changes. And you're not a carer. You were just the care. That was just the path to get you to where you actually are now.
That is incredible. So there's something there about you choose a certain path, but there's a fork in the road that presents itself, which actually turns into your path as well. So it's like, it's trusting the emerging nature of our lives, really, isn't it?
Yes. And I love that, Mary, trusting the emerging nature of our lives. It's so true.
Yeah.
Because I actually thought, this is it. This is me. I am a carer. And what I'm going to do in this as a carer is I'm going to help other carers navigate the social system so their parents don't have to sell their homes to pay for their care. And, I took on CCG, social services, and won because Dad was very unwell. I didn't understand why he would have paid into the system and still have to do this.
Yeah.
And so then I thought my purpose was to help other carers. And for that moment, those months, that year and a half, it was until I then moved on to other things. So when I got the care, help and support I needed, I could then move on to do something else. And
so it really is
out.
There is a lot about trusting what shows up, is what I'm hearing, and also being willing to take the risk and jump.
You
are you're great at taking the risk of jumping, is what I'm hearing.
It's because if you don't, as I say, you'll be sat there going, should I have done that? Oh, I don't know.
Incredible. Well, listen, we are coming to the end of our time. So any parting words you'd like to leave people with as they progress through their lives and let things emerge for them? Are there anything, we've as a world, we've been through this unknown we didn't know what was going to happen in the pandemic. Even in the UK, there's talk of possible another lockdown because of the rising cases of COVID. Any final words you'd like to leave with people?
Yeah, I think just find your purpose. And if you can't find your purpose and you don't know how to find it, what is it that really, gets you excited or gets you angry or gets you upset?
Yes.
What difference? How can you participate in that?
Yes.
Show up in it and have the conversation that, find something that makes you tick. That you can go, that's the mark I made.
Yes.
Even if it's a tiny mark, that is the mark that I made.
Yes.
Find your purpose and live by that. first.
Yes. And I'm also hearing live passionately. Go with where the passion is. If you're not clear what your purpose is, go with what you love.
Go with what you love, or what excites you, or what upsets you.
Yes. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lorraine. You've been a fantastic guest.
Thank you.
We are almost at the end. We are at the end of today's episode. And just to say to everyone who's been watching, thank you for watching, and do leave comments for Lorraine and I. We always respond to all of them. And if you're watching and catch up, please do leave comments as well. We will make sure we respond to those too. I would just like to point out we are almost at the end of this whole series of lessons in leadership. My commitment in creating these live chats was to do 50 of them. And the 50th one is next week. And we are having a special episode. So you might be able to rejoin us next week, actually, Lorraine, because I'm just going to put a message out to all my guests from Lessons in Leadership for next week to see if they can pop in and say hello. And we'll see what lessons we can explore as a group as we all come together for our very final episode. So thank you all for watching. And I really look forward to you joining us next week. Bye for now.